So a lot of moving pieces every day on this program, and we do what we can to keep you updated on the latest. And one of the latest things we've been covering inside and out is the gun ban in Illinois, where more than 170 different semi-automatic guns are on a list as prohibited to be sold, and if you own them before the prohibition began on January 10th, then you're going to have to register those with Illinois State Police. That includes magazine capacities of more than 10 rounds for rifles, more than 15 rounds for handguns. All of this enacted by a Democratic supermajority, though there were some Democrats that voted no. All Republicans in the Illinois House, except for the former House Minority Leader Jim Durkin, voted against the weapons ban, but there are tons of lawsuits stacking up all over the place against this, both in federal and state courts. And we've seen most of the action in state court, where Attorney Thomas DeVore secured a restraining order against enforcement of the measure on behalf of 866 plaintiffs in Effingham County. That came 10 days after the law was enacted. It was appealed by the Attorney General in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then the appellate court upheld that restraining order on the issue of equal protections. So that's the Effingham County case, a TRO upheld. Well, we've been waiting for the White County judge to issue a ruling one way or the other on a requested temporary restraining order in White County. And one of the plaintiffs among nearly 1,700 of those who sued in White County joins me now. He is State Representative Adam Niemerg. Thanks for taking time with us here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop. So what's the latest you know of the White County decision? When can we expect that, especially now that the appellate courts made their decision?
Well, Greg, thanks for having me on this morning. And folks, thanks for tuning in with us here this morning. It's looking like we should hear something fairly soon. Honestly, I was looking yesterday pretty hard to see if we'd hear anything yesterday, because with the appellate court ruling and upholding the fourth complaint that was issued in the Effingham County court case about equal protection, it sets that precedent for our White County decision. So it should be coming fairly quickly. That at least the fourth complaint should be upheld due to the fact that the fifth district appellate upheld the fourth complaint in appellate court. But the interesting thing about this is the last couple of days I've been talking with a lot of attorneys about what all this means. And I'm not an attorney, but I'm talking to other attorneys about what the fifth district appellate court case means. And from what I'm understanding, when that comes back down to Effingham, the Effingham County judge or somebody in that capacity could ask for that injunction. And based on the fifth district appellate court ruling on the fourth complaint on equal protection, this could apply to the entire state. This could happen sometime this next week, where this appellate court case could be cited, and this could be something that could have ramifications throughout the entire state. Now, folks, we just have to wait and see how things go. That's a lot of lawyer talk on so to speak, on what should be happening. But it could be for the entire state. Now, the federal cases, they should have had 14 days once the initial complaints are issued to the defendants from the plaintiffs, and they're asking for an injunction. The Illinois State Rifle Association. Now, if that injunction is given in federal court, that would apply to the entire state. So, I would ask the Illinois State Police and other state agencies to just, let's go slow on this. Don't. There's no need to be going out to gun shops. There's no need to be, putting the cart in front of the horse, so to speak, because we've got this in court, and it's looking like this TRO is going to apply statewide one way or the other.
We'll talk a little bit about some of the House rules, and you've been at the State House for several terms now, and I've been covering the State House for quite some time, and watching this pressure campaign that seems to be just a go-to process at the tail end of some sessions, be it veto session, be it lame duck session, or regular spring session. So we'll talk about that in a moment. That seems to touch on some of the counts that were raised on the three readings rule, the single subject, the due process issues, but that fourth count that the appellate court upheld, talk about the significance of that was the thing that they upheld, tossing everything else out. How much weight does that give the arguments that this law is violating individuals' rights?
Well, I think that gives a great argument to why it's violating my rights. My rights are not as valued. My Second Amendment rights, my right to keep and bear arms, is weighed against a particular type of training. It's weighed against somebody through a particular legislator that deems that they're more qualified to handle a commonly used sporting rifle than myself. And when you look at the carve-outs, they have certain active duty veterans, but if you're not active duty, you don't qualify. So a Navy SEAL doesn't qualify when they're no longer on active duty, and they have certain carve-outs for Department of Corrections. And the training, and not to say anything ill about any of those individuals who have been carved out, the argument is that why have they been carved out, and folks like ourselves are subject to this violation of equal protection. So for the Fifth Appellate to rule on the equal protection is a big deal, because when you talk about equal protection, there's carve-outs for a lot of other bills. So this could cause a lot of reexamination of potential past bills and also future bills, and what that means whenever we're putting one class of individuals, one class of Illinois citizens ahead of the other based on arbitrary lawmaking ability.
We're talking with State Representative Adam Niemerg here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, now 817. And Representative, this, of course, is just, a stack upon stack of lawsuits against the state's gun ban. But there have been other lawsuits about the firearm owner identification card, for instance. How crucial is it that these situations get dealt with sooner than later in a state like Illinois, while you've got other states all around us that have much more lax gun laws?
Yes, we're pretty much on an island with the Floyd card, and I have a border district, a very large border district with Indiana, and Indiana just last year passed constitutional carry. So we're in a situation here where, and I said this on the floor, and I'll keep saying this bill does nothing to curb gun violence. The criminals out on the streets will still find access to these firearms. This just encroaches on the Second Amendment for law-abiding citizens. But when you look at the Bruin case in New York, when you look at the makeup of the Supreme Court, when you look at least 7 other states that are being sued by gun advocacy groups, and not just 1 or 2, the full gamut of gun advocacy groups, they're waiting for the Supreme Court to pick up a couple of these cases, and we could have some really, really good inroads on the Second Amendment, because with Bruin setting the precedent, with this case potentially going to the Supreme Court, federal Supreme Court, everything is on the table. And we're talking about things as much as the Floyd card being an infringement on the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. So I think everything's on the table. I think it's going to be a very stressful but interesting next couple of months when it comes to what these rulings are going to be, not only in the state of Illinois, but also federally with how they're going to interpret the Second Amendment. And I hope that things will go our way on this issue.
Again, we're talking with State Representative Adam Niemerg about the latest in the litigation against the state of Illinois' ban on certain types of semi-automatic weapons. You are a plaintiff in the White County case. We'll watch that closely and see what develops there. Could happen today or tomorrow, but you've also got a hearing in Macon County for a separate lawsuit that was brought by State Representative Dan Calkins against the state's gun ban. So all of this we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on. But Representative, this was just one measure that seems to come at the tail end of a session where the pressure campaign is on for people to just vote on something, and a lot of questions raised about the single subject rule, about the 3 readings rule. These are some things in the Illinois Constitution, but when it comes to the conduct of the House, talk about the House rules. We can really easily get into the minutia and the wonk of it all, but why are the House rules so important? Talk about that to the layperson who doesn't watch the state house as closely as you or I do.
Oh, absolutely. So the House rules, we vote on the House rules. The Democrats are in the supermajority, so they have the authority to draw the House rules. And obviously, with 78 members, they're going to pass and justify whatever they want and whatever they need to further their agenda. So the House rules were voted on yesterday, and those govern the next 2 years of what will happen in the General Assembly as far as processes, as far as logistically how bills will be passed, how they'll get out of committee, how they'll be heard, and like you said, the minutia of every bill that's going to be discussed on the House floor. The issue that we have with this is it's business as usual. These are Madigan-era rules. They removed the COVID language, which should have been gone a long time ago, but they're saying we've done a great job removing this COVID language, which should have been an automatic. And here's our bills. This is the bill to support our new rules changes for the 103rd General Assembly. You should all vote for them. They're wonderful. They're great. But they're identical to Madigan-style rules. Actually, they're bringing back some rules that Madigan even decided were not productive to the General Assembly, and that is, if you've heard, our bills die in rules. A bill gets put in rules and it dies in rules, meaning that the Rules Committee has the complete authority to get your bill into a committee. So when you submit a bill, it goes into Rules Committee. Once it's in Rules Committee, they have the authority then to put it out into a substantive committee to be heard. So there's no mechanism to remove those from rules. It's completely arbitrary. We don't know whose bill will get out, how it will get out, or why it will get out to be heard. So these are Madigan-style rules. And folks, I mean, we're still going to be passing bills. If anybody looked at my Facebook page, State Representative Adam Niemerg, or follows me on Twitter or Facebook or anything, you'll see that I debated this yesterday. And there was zero justification for why we will be sitting there at 9 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, where a bill will literally be dropped on that floor. They will waive any requirements for it to be heard, and we'll be voting on it within 2 or 3 minutes of it first being seen, with zero debate and going straight to a vote. That violates the due process of every person that I represent, in my opinion, because you have zero opportunity to have your elected official review a piece of legislation that is on that floor. So these 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock antics, and Greg, you are so familiar with how this all usually goes down.
I am, and honestly, it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
It is, and it should not happen. And I pointed this out yesterday, and I pointed it out to the 19 that supposedly stood against Madigan. And they were very upset that I pointed it out, but it's very true. They supported Madigan-era public policy by voting for these rules. And these are the very things that need to change in Springfield. This is the fundamental wrong that happens in Springfield. We can debate these bills and disagree all day long, and we do, but there is no reason to have a bill dropped within 5 minutes, be voting on it, and I have no idea what's in the bill, and for me to have sat there for 14 hours and be 4 or 5 in the morning, and we're voting on it.
And it's happened with not just the gun ban that recently passed. We saw it with the Safety Act. We see it seemingly every year when it comes to a budget, last-minute changes, not necessarily thorough debate. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting year to see what happens in the months ahead. State Representative Adam Niemerg will definitely be talking again soon because we got to talk about the budget that's going to be coming up, the governor's State of the State address, and any other priorities that you think Republicans may be able to get across the finish line, if any at all. So greatly appreciate it. We'll talk again soon, all right?
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Much more